All right, 3 o'clock Chad here. Trailblazers suffered a tough loss last night at Moda to the Heat. They were up 10 at halftime, but DeAndre Ayton did not return for the second half after suffering a sprained wrist. He had a double-double with 12 and 10 in the first half. X-rays negative, and more tests are coming. Portland will kick off a 3-game road trip Friday in Memphis. Tip-off at 5. I'll have game day starting at 2:30. Sean Highkin will join the show and talk basketball with us coming up at 5:20. The NFLPA surveys are out. The Super Bowl champion Chiefs are number 1 in the NFL, but ranked 31st for the players in their surveys. We got more on this coming up on the Rip City Drive. And former Cowboy and Washington Husky Eric Bjornson going to stop by the show at 4:20 and talk NFL Combine. The Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad comes at you right now. All right, what's going on? Chad Doing and the Godfather Dwight James with you, Rip City Drive. We got two guys coming on the show today. Eric Bjornson, who a former Cowboy, Super Bowl champion, and former Washington Husky, won a national championship with the Huskies. Going to stop off at 4:20, and we'll talk about his NFL Combine experience. I really want to know from him what information he would value the most at the Combine. The measurables, the interviews, or other details that can be picked up along the way. So we'll talk with Eric Bjornson at 4:20, and then we'll talk basketball. We got a lot of injury updates we got to get to with Sean Highkin coming up at 5:20. You can find The Godfather on social media at Dwight James. You'll find me there at Chad in Rip City. The telephone number here is 503-248-0620, and at Master Control today is our good friend Mike Oakes. So it's great to be with you. And Godfather, I don't know about you, but every once in a while in the middle of my work day, it's nice to get the occasional pick-me-up, something that you're not expecting. Good news on occasion, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm at Moda Center last night, and the basketball game had just gotten underway. And I was thinking about all the different things I have to do coming up this week and into the weekend, and different things with my kids and all the things that bring a little bit of stress to your body. And then I got this text message, "Have you seen this?" And I'm like, what's going on here? And I opened up the link, and I was like, oh, my goodness. According to TMZ, the Eagles, not the Philadelphia Eagles, but the great rock and roll
The real
band,
Eagles. Yeah.
might be stepping in to replace U2 at the Spears' next big legacy act. That is, if they can hammer out these negotiations they're currently involved in, according to TMZ. Sources with direct knowledge tell us the iconic rock band are in active discussions right now to potentially serve as forthcoming talent to fill in Sin City's newest music venue, which would be a big deal, seeing how there's only been one so far in its big debut. We're told that while the Eagles are in talks at the moment, a deal isn't in place yet, and it's unclear when exactly things might get finalized. One thing we do know is the time frame organizers have in mind would be residency for Don Henley and company, assuming everything works out. We're told the fall or winter. And in regards to the type of dollars they would be looking at, Godfather, it's pretty impressive. But it says here in terms of money, no word on how much the Hotel California musicians would snag for something like this, but U2 is said to have been raking in about $4 million per concert at the Sphere. And my initial reaction to this news was, it's not that Don Henley and the Eagles need more of my money, but they're about to get it. You and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
They're on their final tour that will extend into next year and probably into late 2025 before they shut it down. If you're a band that's that iconic and you've got a chance to play at the ultimate concert venue, which is now the Sphere in Las Vegas, it's a great way to go out. And I don't care what the price of the tickets are. I will be there. You will go. I'll do whatever it takes to see it in that place, because I just talked to someone who was down there for U2 this past weekend.
Yeah.
They said it's unbelievable.
That's what I keep hearing.
Literally unbelievable. So how can you pass up an opportunity? And if you're going to fill the Sphere, you want bands like U2 or the Eagles that will get a guaranteed audience to pay the type of money that is needed to be able to fill the Sphere.
they won't have any trouble at all selling tickets for months, I would guess. What do you think that's going to cost us for a ticket, Chad? Give me a spread, like most expensive ticket, cheapest ticket.
Well, I'll just start with what figures I came up with in my mind for the type of seats I would pay for. I've been to so many concerts and events now that I've learned over time that sitting down close to the stage, while it's cool, it doesn't really improve my experience that much more. So for the seats I would be looking at, I'm guessing somewhere between $500 and $1,000.
Yeah.
That's my rough guess.
Well, I think we heard, we had a listener call who had gone to the Sphere to see you too. And I think she told us that further back was fine, that there wasn't really any advantage to getting
fine,
closer.
fine. In terms of price.
In terms of price?
Yeah. Did she mention that?
No. But I assumed those were cheaper further back.
Well, of course.
But U2's one thing. They're going to get more for the Eagles. I guarantee it. They're going to get more. I believe that because last roundup for the Eagles, American band, so iconic, more iconic even than U2. It's a big deal, big deal for them.
I'm just going to have to pay whatever is necessary to get into the concert. And it probably won't be a one-off for me. I'll probably end up seeing him at the Sphere. Because here's what's going to happen. You'll go down there for the first time in the Sphere. You'll watch a concert, and you're like, holy crap, I've got to see him in there again because it's that good. The experience with the sound, with the setup, the fact that it's brand new, with all of the video and the lighting and everything you've got with it. And again, the Eagles, they care more about the music and making sure that the craftsmanship of the songs is proper. So they're not going to try and put on a laser light show or something nonsense like that. But you're going to take it in and be like, okay, I got to go back there again. That's how good it's going to be.
Yeah, the pictures I've seen from inside the Sphere during concerts has been amazing. I don't think I've actually seen video during a concert. I think they're kind of guarding that a little bit. But there have been slides online. It's incredible what the ceiling and the background are in the Sphere. It's just amazing. And we won't get in. I mean, I said 500 originally. You said 500. We'll be very fortunate to get in for 500, I would think.
We may have to pull a Carrie Eggers and decide that we want to cover the event.
Oh, yeah. Media passes, I think, would be very appropriate.
Why not?
Well, iHeart must have some connection to the Sphere, I would think.
Getting in with a press pass, like normally, I'm not that type of guy. But depending on the price,
except
I may
for
have
selected bowl games. But go ahead. Yeah,
I may have to do that.
Yeah,
I may have to do that. And the only reason why I sold the tickets at the Sun Bowl was because Notre Dame got into that game and drove up the price of the tickets.
Yeah,
I would have never gotten the press passes had Notre Dame not done that. But I was like, got to capitalize and take
free
advantage
money.
of the Pope, and I did.
Yeah, that was free money.
It was free money. So, and Carrie Eggers is classic because I'm like, every once in a while, for years, I saw little articles come out from Carrie. I'm like, what was he doing at a Taylor Dane concert? And he would write up a piece and interview the artist. And I was like, what's going on there? And then I realized, like, oh, he's doing work. But really what he was doing was going to see a show he wanted to see and not paying for it. I think that's what he was doing.
And getting to talk to the artist along the way, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I would do that. Hey, you can go for free with a press pass and interview Don Henley or Timothy B. Schmidt, or you can go and pay $1,000 to sit way in the back at the end of the Sphere. What would you like to do? I'll do either. But here's my justification for this type of activity. And I've been seeing concerts now for years, Godfather. The Eagles, in my estimation, in all the shows I've seen, put on the absolute best concert in the history of concerts. And it's so good. And it's been so good now. And I've been seeing them. The first time I saw them was back in 1995, January of 95. And I've been going to concerts for the Eagles for years because it's so good. I know I'm going to get a return on the money that I spend because high-quality music, they play a bunch of songs, and they put on a 3-hour show. Like, that's my type of concert. And so I know that they're going to be done soon. And I don't want to miss out on that. So that's why I keep going to see them, because I know when they're done, I'm going to wish that I would have watched them more and more and more. And that's why I record all the videos with the phone when I go, because I want those memories. It's really, I love it. There's nothing better than going to an Eagles concert for me. I think it's the greatest.
And the good thing is they're so conscientious about the concerts they put on. They want to give you They know people are paying a lot. They want to give you your money's worth. They care. They care about their fans. This one, their final go around, they're going to be up there playing every hit they've ever had.
Yeah. That's what they do, usually somewhere between 25 and 30 songs, 3 hours plus. And they're not like some of these bands that are like, oh, here's some deep cuts for you. No, they know what the fans are there to hear.
Yeah.
They're going to play their hits. They're going to let Joe Walsh do what he does, and they give you what you want. And my favorite concerts, no matter what the band is, are the ones who go out there and give you at least 2 hours plus of music. When you start giving me the jacked up hour and 15 or 90-minute set list, I'm usually out on you. Like that right there to me is disrespect when you have a deep catalog. So I just can't wait to see the Sphere. I've driven by it. I've flown over the top of it. I've seen it. Looks cool from the outside. And now I want to be there on the inside to check it out. And Mika, who was down there last weekend for U2, said it was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Said the sound, the visual setup, everything was top-notch.
Last time I was in Las Vegas was for the Pac-12 championship. I got a room with a view of the Sphere. And I opened the curtain and sat there for about, I guess it was 20 minutes watching it.
Mesmerized.
It's on a loop of some sort, so you'll eventually see the same thing come around.
Yeah.
But until the same thing comes around, spellbound. I mean, you're just sitting there staring at this huge Sphere, and the lighting on it, everything is like, there's no little light bulbs out or anything like that. Everything is just perfect.
All right. So I'm in, 100% in.
Yeah.
Just wait for the announcement. And they'll hammer out a deal. And the Eagles, they like money. I've learned that over the course of time. Don Henley and company like to make their money, and they're not going to turn down an opportunity to make $4 to $5 million a show. That is just sick cash. Good for them.
Now, wait a minute. If they're going to make just $4 million a show, you could figure what tickets are going to cost. How many seats are there to sell, do you think?
I don't know.
A couple thousand?
No, I don't know what the capacity is.
I don't either.
That's why they have Google, Godfather.
Yeah, well
check it out. All right, check it out. We'll come back and we'll give you updates. I'll find out what the ticket prices were, the average ticket prices were for U2. And then we'll find out what the capacity is for the Sphere. Yeah, I'm going. I'm in. And it's probably not going to be a one-off. It'll be multiple times. I can't say no. They've got me hook, line, and sinker, Godfather.
So you'd go down and like buy back-to-back concerts, or would you go wait a couple months and go back? What would you do?
I like back-to-backers. I've done a back-to-backer a couple of times down at the Forum. The greatest.
Yeah, but you're lucky, too. You got some place to stay down there, right?
Steve's house.
Yeah.
I hit up Steve already. He's like, oh, that could be very good for you and I said, I know. I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah.
Just letting you know, brother. Now I just got to convince him that it's worth his investment to drop $500 to $1,000 on a concert ticket.
Because he's not into them as much as you, right? I mean,
no,
I know he likes them.
Toto is his favorite band of all time.
Yeah.
I just love music. Concerts are the greatest, and I'm going to be there. Make the announcement. Come on, Don, get on that. He's in his mid-70s. Don't be jacking around, man. Get those dates set, dog. Hook a brother up. Don't give us any details yet.
All right.
We'll discuss when we come back. We're going to get to the NFL Combine. What data would you value the most when it comes to these prospects that are going to be in the NFL Draft? You got the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. All right, Godfather, a couple of details for you. Mika reached out and said the upper seats at the Sphere can be a little more expensive, actually, because you have a full view of the Sphere. 400 level can make people pretty dizzy because it's super steep and high up. And $500 is starting price for you two and goes up from there. She said she sold her one ticket for $900.
So the play on this might be to buy 4 tickets if you need to and try to finance your trip by selling the other 2.
Yes, if you can get your tickets with the initial sale without having to go through the secondary market. Because once it hits the secondary market, you're going to get punked.
Yeah.
What's the capacity on the Sphere?
I had no idea it was this big, Chad. The seating capacity is 17,600, but there's a standing room capacity of 20,000. And get this, of the 17,600 seats, 10,000 are immersive with special sound system that allows guests to feel sound vibrate.
All right, you said the standing room has a capacity of 20,000.
Yeah.
Is that 20,000 people in standing room or
No, 20
standing room
total.
pushes it up to 20 total?
Yeah.
All right, James Krause reached out and said, hey, Section 206 and the Sphere are the best seats in the house. I went to an exclusive private event there and was told by the sound engineers that all the video and sound was engineered from that section. The venue is incredible. And Scotty Buffoon has sent out pictures of the Sphere.
Yeah.
When I drove by the Sphere, when I was down there, I think it was for Pac-12 Media Day, I had this sweet Uber driver. She was awesome. And she picked me up at my hotel, and she said, have you seen the Sphere? And I said, no. And she goes, well, I'll just swing you by there on your way to the airport. So she took me over by the Sphere, and it was a giant basketball, an NBA basketball.
Yeah.
And it looked like a real basketball. It was unique. You could see the texture on the basketball with the high def. I was mind blown by the entire experience.
When I was looking at it, they had an eyeball. It was incredible. It was crazy.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So I think we were pretty much spot on. It's bigger than we thought.
Yeah.
Everyone says it's amazing, as you would expect. And the ticket prices to get into the event are going to be outrageous. So you're right. The best thing to do is hope that you can get into the pre-sale, land 4 tickets, sell 2 of them, and then finance part of your trip for going to the concert.
Yeah, because you know what, Chad? I'll bet we're going to have to pay close to $1,000, if not more than $1,000 for a seat, 1 seat. You could fly around the world on that.
Yeah, don't do the comparison of, hey, for $1,200 you could do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I really don't need to hear that kind of stuff right now.
Yeah.
I understand what I'm doing. I know that I'm getting hosed, but it's well worth it. Because it's not one of those things, you know, you do certain things where you spend money and you look back, you're like, what did I do that for? That was a waste. Going to a concert there and seeing a band you love, you're not going to walk away saying, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
What a waste of time. That's not going to happen. You'll walk out being, dude, I need more of that. It's like a narcotic. Give me more.
It's going to ruin you for other concerts, probably, when you see something, because as the visual experience is incredible.
Yeah.
But what everybody raves about is the sound.
Yeah. So you go to a concert at the Sphere, and then someone's like, hey, you want to hit the Coliseum and go watch Doobies? No, I'm good.
Yeah.
No, thanks. No, actually, I don't.
I'll pass.
I'm good. Because no venue you go to after that, it would be hard to match up. And I've been to some very good acoustic buildings known for sound and the way they operate. I can't wait to get there and check it out. This is awesome. This is great news. I was hoping this would happen. Normally when the Eagles play in Vegas, they always go to the MGM and play at the Garden Arena.
Mm-hmm.
But it just makes sense. Great band, great venue. The two need to be married together. It's a no-brainer.
Well, the amazing thing is the Sphere seating capacity is just about, it's like the Moda Center, basically.
20,000.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. That's the latest on the Sphere. Eagles are in negotiations right now. And what a perfect way to finish out and have a chance to do a little residency at the Sphere. That is epic. One thing that might be helpful, probably not, but if they go and play a residency there and agree to X number of shows, maybe some of the shows won't be as high priced as the first couple of shows. Maybe.
You're dreaming. You're dreaming. Come on, Chad. Let's get back to the real world here.
All right. There you go. That's all I need to know about that. Okay, let's talk a little NFL Combine. Daniel Jeremiah, who works for NFL Network now. I think he does the color commentary on the Chargers radio broadcast with Matt Money Smith. Big fan of his, and he used to work in the NFL in the front office. So he's got a great perspective on the combine and everything that goes into what teams are trying to accomplish. So I want to ask you this question, Godfather. What data would you value most? Would it be the measurables where you've got the time on a guy's 40-yard dash, you know how many times he can put up, 225 on the bench press and all the different physical things that they go through? Would it be the one-on-one interviews where you have a chance to meet with them? Would it be the Wonderlic tests? Or would it be with the other private eye type data you gather from sending people out to communicate with the people who may know something about the person where you're not hearing from them? Because what he said that was interesting to me is that when you get these players at the combine and they're meeting with the general press or even with teams one-on-one, they've been trained, right?
Yeah.
They've gone through training, or at least you would hope with their representation, they've been coached up on how to deal with those questions that they're going to be bombarded with. So for you, what data would you value the most? And I guess the other thing we could put on that list too would be the medicals.
Well, the medicals, obviously, you got to, I think you look at the medicals first, Chad. And if they better be up to snuff or you're not even going to go any further, right? I mean, if the medicals don't look good to you, what's the point? I think for me, and I know they've gotten a lot of questions in advance. They've rehearsed these players on what to say. If I'm interviewing a quarterback, that one-on-one thing's going to matter to me because I think I can ask them questions that their guys couldn't prepare for. I would have the whiteboard up there or a chalkboard, and I'd start drawing formations, and I'd start drawing offensive the way our formations are, and I would show them things. Okay, what play are you calling here? Or we've got such and such called on this play. What would you get us out to? You don't know our terminology, but what would work here? What would work there? Why not throw to this guy or that guy? Or how is their coverage going to be? I think there's a lot of really technical questions you could ask very quickly to quarterbacks to find out, is this guy a processor or not? Can he see things? Because they do all their homework on in much the same way. And I think you have to know somehow if they can process, even if you have to go to video and say, this is what we're looking at before the play, and would you get us in something different? This is what we had called. Do you like that? All those things I think for quarterbacks would be valuable. Otherwise, I like the running, the 40-yard dash. You have to see that in person because they're going to come to you with times they've run out in the backyard with their dad keeping the stopwatch or whatever, and I'm kidding, but, you want to know the real legitimate time they can run. I've always wondered why they didn't have them run with pads on.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of cheating to run in shorts and a T-shirt because some guys run better. You can look at running backs who ran as good with pads as they did without them. Other guys can't. But those are things I'd look at. And also, I've got a library of tape on them in real game situations. That has to be a big part. You look at that ahead of time, too, which might give rise to questions you would ask them. Hey, in the Washington game, you were faced with this. Why didn't you do this or why did you do that? Why was this play called? You checked out of this into this. So there's all those kind of questions. But obviously, there's so many things to think about when you're looking at spending millions on a player, especially at the top of the first round.
I love your answer there because I think getting these guys in a situation to discuss football terminology and the game itself, I think, is the most critical. Because one thing Jeremiah said was, these teams like the Wonderlic test, which is basically like an aptitude test.
Mm-hmm.
And he said a lot of the questions are like, if you leave this city at this time and you're trained traveling this fast, it's a lot of those type of questions, right? Problem-solving questions. But the problem is, and I've talked to Neil Lomax about this, and he was talking about some of the teammates he had in the NFL. And he said he had guys who he didn't think were the brightest guys, but on a football field, they understood the game and exactly how they needed to run every play and where to be and how to operate. And he said those are the guys I could trust the most. So I think getting them in a situation where they're talking about football terminology on how to handle certain situations, to see how they discuss it, see how comfortable they are with it, to see how quickly they process that, I think that's some of the most important stuff. And you're right about the 40-yard dash. The way that Jeremiah pointed this out and what he said that was important about this is that, the reason why that data is important is because what you have is you've got a situation where you get guys who are running the 40, if you look at the top 10 receivers in the NFL, they all fit within a certain parameter on that data, right? So you know that the top guys are always going to run the 40 in about this time. And he said the reason why it's important, too, is you get guys that may be quick off the line, but their flat-out speed is not there. And so over the course of 10 to 15 yards, the receiver can get the best on the corner and so forth. The other thing I hadn't heard about before, too, in terms of measurables, what about the 10 yards? The first 10 yards off the line of scrimmage. There are guys like Jerry Rice who weren't the fastest guys in the league, but they were so good off the ball that they would beat their guy and be able to get open and get downfield and make big plays. I think that's critical. And as he pointed out with the aptitude test, he goes, there are a number of guys that I could name right now who did not do well on the Wonderlic test and have gold jackets, right? So the weird part about this whole combine thing, all these teams are still searching for the formula, the right questions, the right data to be able to solve this problem of trying to figure out which guys to take in the draft. And there's no perfect formula. It's still a crapshoot. Even with all the information you come away with, you still don't know.
Yeah, with all the analytic advances that have been made, there's certainly not one for that. You can't put a number on anybody and say, okay, he graded out here. That means he's going to be a better quarterback or wide receiver, whatever. It's just impossible, and that's why mistakes are made. And people get mad at their GM for making mistakes in any draft, baseball, football, basketball, whatever. Nobody's perfect in this. It's not an exact science.
No, and the other problem, too, there are a lot of guys who interview well, who can process the game at an incredibly high level, but physically, when they get on the field in the NFL, they just can't get it done. Brian Greasy would be a perfect example. He was a very good college quarterback at Michigan. He scored ridiculously high on the Wonderlic test. He could process and understand information at an NFL level as well as anyone. But the problem is when you got him in game situations, he would make too many mistakes. And he didn't physically have the attributes you needed to be able to succeed on that level. But he could process and communicate the terminology as well as anyone.
Yeah, you have to have the arm talent. That kind of helps when you're a quarterback.
Yes. So I'm blown away by all of this. Now, you did get a chance to watch some tape on Jaden Daniels, former Arizona State Sun Devil, won the Heisman Trophy this past year with LSU. What's your take on him?
Well, you know, I'd seen him play, Chad, but I know you'd seen him play a lot more than me. And you made the remark yesterday, I think it was, or maybe the day before, that his size bothered you a little bit. His frame, I think, more
tall and lanky.
So, yeah. So I went back and looked at a bunch of tape of him. I don't see how he's going to get through a season, honestly. He just doesn't look solid enough, built well enough to survive the NFL game. He's taken licks in college. It's not going to be anything like what he's going to take in the NFL, and it only takes one brutal hit. He just doesn't look like he'd hold up to me. Now, that's just me, and they still take guys like that now, but I'd be a little worried about that.
I forgot who it was. It might have been Jeremiah or somebody else, but they were talking about Brock Purdy with the 49ers. And he was having a conversation with Kyle Shanahan. And, you know, because when you look at Purdy, he's got the young face.
Yes.
And he looks like a smaller quarterback. But they're having a discussion with Kyle. He's like, no, look at his legs. And he's like, oh, my gosh, you're right. He's got legs like a running back. Like he's built sturdy and strong from the ground up, right? His base is solid. Or if you look at Bo Nix from Oregon, nice, strong body. He doesn't have the tall, lanky body. He's well put together. Strong, and so he can absorb some of that punishment, right?
Yeah.
And I remember watching Daniels because I have this weird fascination with Arizona State football, and I saw him play multiple games live in person as a freshman, and I was amazed at his arm talent and his accuracy, but I kept looking at his body, and he was so slender and slight of frame. I'm like, how's that going to work? Because he's taken a lot of big hits in college, and part of the formula that these teams are trying to figure out, it's like, okay, how's that body going to adjust and adapt to the NFL level?
Yeah.
Because he's going to take more hits. And is this a guy that can stay healthy long periods of time, long stretches? Because, as you know, availability is the most important thing. And for some guys, even if you want to put on weight, if you're a true ectomorph, no matter what you do, you're not going to become that thick, solid quarterback like we've seen in the NFL. Like Lamar Jackson, when he came out, he was a little slight of frame. But because of his genetic makeup, we've seen him over time with the weights and the training. Look at him now. I mean, the guy's like a freaking Adonis out there, right? Some guys just don't have the ability to bulk up and get stronger like that, and that's scary.
Well, I covered the NBA long enough to see when that weightlifting thing really came in, Chad, and you started seeing guys bulk up more.
Yeah.
And I asked the trainer, I said, is that always wise? And he said, here's the thing. We're not trying to make them strong, but in this case, your muscles are armor. That's your armor to protect you. And I think in football, it's even more important. That whole body, and Bo Nix is a great example. He's got some protection there. That protects his bones, his frame, his ligaments even. You know, you need to have that in the NFL. All the armor you can get before you put on your pads.
100%. In fact, last night would be a perfect example. Like, it's a good thing that DeAndre Ayton takes his conditioning seriously and was a strong guy, because that fall that he took when he drove to the rim and went crashing down, well, the strength training and the exercise helps strengthen your bones, your ligaments, your tendons. So when you take a fall like that, instead of winding up with a busted wrist, you come away with a sprain, which can prevent you from being out for an extended period of time. And that's why for these quarterbacks now, the conditioning is critical, because you're no matter who you are, even Lamar Jackson, as mobile as he is, you're still a sitting duck in the pocket with those big dudes trying to get on top of you, man.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Yeah. Chris Jones driving you into the ground.
Yeah, and Lamar, I mean, he's huge now, but he's been hurt all the time. You know, it's not like that's really helped him sometimes. So then you look at a guy like Daniels and you say, oh, man.
Yeah.
He's going to need some luck to get through.
Now, it could be, and some guys, depending on your genetic makeup, like some guys just have a knack for being able to stave off injury, right?
Yeah.
Now, John Elway was one of those guys where he took a beating and yet remained remarkably healthy and be able to play throughout the course of his career without missing long stretches. Some guys just are fortunate that way, but that would be my main concern with Daniels. I love his IQ, his accuracy, his arm talent. Like, he does a lot of things extremely well that would make you salivate over getting your hands on a guy like that. But that's one of the concerns in the formula when you're trying to figure out which quarterback to take. Is he going to be able to survive the punishment? But isn't that scary? Because when you're talking about taking a quarterback, especially with the quarterbacks, you talk about taking a quarterback at the top of the draft, that's a high-level pick that you're using on a guy and you're going to invest millions of dollars into.
Yeah.
So if you miss on the pick, it can really set you back.
Yeah. That's where, it's going to sound funny. I know in this day of analytics, sometimes you got a couple of old-time scouts sitting there. And I've seen it in basketball, baseball, and football.
Yeah.
You talk to those guys, and they'll take one look at a guy and say, he's not going to last. Or he might say, this guy's going to surprise you. I've seen this before. Guy exactly like that with that frame, he's going to be able to avoid the big hit. Somehow he's not going to take the beating that other people will. And you look at, there's so many examples in basketball, Chad, of these guys that look like Adonises. And they can't last. They get hurt all the time. And then other guys, not so much. Wemby, he's just skating through his rookie season. The guy's, there's no way that should happen when you look back at all these big centers who've gotten hurt. Not bothering him. He's just getting right through it.
Oh, my goodness. Well, the Combine, it continues on right now as these teams are trying to figure out which players they like, which ones they don't. How do you think teams already have their boards set? One thing that Jeremiah did say is that, you go into the Combine and the team's board is set up one particular way. And then he'll come back after the Combine. The board's totally different. He's like, What happened to number 55? Or what happened to Johnson? And it was the medicals. We did the medicals. It didn't check out. And all of a sudden that player will come off the board or drop significantly down the board based on the medicals. And he said that's usually one of those big factors when it comes into setting your board and determining who you're going to take. So I would think the medicals, we know this. Same thing with Michael Penix, right? If a guy has a serious injury history or a body that you're uncertain of, that can obviously have a major impact and cause a guy to fall, because you don't want to risk that type of investment at the top of the draft in a guy that you don't think physically can hang in there, especially in a sport as violent as football.
Yeah. No, it's there's such a degree of luck in this, but knowledge, skill, and the guys who've been through enough drafts, I give those experienced GMs an edge and their scouts. If you've seen enough of this, I think your odds are better of making the right choice. But you still have to have luck. You have to. Some of these injuries quarterbacks face is just out and out bad luck. You get a broken leg because somebody took a cheap shot at you after the whistle.
Or you wind up number 2 in the draft, and the team in front of you takes the quarterback you would have taken, and you
Bingo.
wind up with the guy that you wouldn't have taken, but he turns out to be the better quarterback.
Hey, in the NBA, you end up in a draft where somebody takes Greg Oden. So, gosh, I guess I got to take Kevin Durant.
And it works out for you.
Yeah.
Or if you're the Houston Texans, you wind up with C.J. Stroud when you would have taken Bryce Young, and you get yourself a star.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're right. There is some luck involved in it because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
They can't know for sure.
Some like NBA draft this year, I've been told by more than one scout this year, feels like the top 7 guys are all the same for right now. They're not going to end up being the same, but they all look the same right now. So you might as well have the 7th pick and let all the other guys ahead of you make their mistakes, and you just take whatever's left. You got just as good a chance, and as the 7th pick, the pressure's not on the guy.
All right, we'll come back, and when we do, we'll focus in on Heat culture. A couple of things we noticed from last night. We will get to Dame. Apparently, he's bored and not exactly happy in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Stunning. All right, 503-248-0620. Eric Bjornson, former Cowboy, Super Bowl champ and national champion with the Huskies at 420. We'll talk ball with Sean Highkin at 520 here on the Rip City Drive. All right, Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. Eric Bjornson, Super Bowl champ, coming up at 4:20, and we will talk with Sean Hyken from the Rose Garden Report coming up at 5:20. Our boy Scotty reached out. His last name is spelled Bethune, and he said, "Did Chode just mispronounce my last name?" How would you pronounce that? It's Scotty Bethune, right?
That's what I would say. Bethune, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I did not call him buffoon. I did reference in regards to other people. I did call someone a buffoon or a group of people buffoons, but I do that all the time. But no, Scotty, I did not call you a buffoon. I'm sure you've done something that would make you a buffoon before, but I did not pronounce it that way. I don't know what he's talking about, but that's how you pronounce that name, right? Bethune?
Yeah. I didn't.
It's not Bethune, right?
No. Bethune.
Bethune.
I thought maybe I heard a buffoon too, but maybe that's what he heard. I don't know. Scotty, what did you hear? Tell us what you heard.
I don't even care what he heard.
Yeah.
He's
a
pain in the
buffoon
ass.
anyway,
He is.
right?
He's a buffoon, and he's always busting my chops, and I respect that.
No,
And
he does.
I love it, too, because he's one of those guys where it's like he's always running his mouth, but I've met him, and I've met his wife, too.
Mm-hmm.
The wife is fully aware of his mouthiness,
Yeah.
and even she just rolls her eyes, which is
Yes.
pretty cool. So I like that.
Yeah. I was happy to meet him. He's a good supporter of the show.
He is.
Yeah, don't mistake this, Scotty, for thinking that we're upset with you or anything. We just want to clear the air.
Yeah, and he loves to golf. He shares a desire to golf. The last time I actually saw him in person, I think it was one of those awkward moments where early morning at the golf course over at Heron, and in the morning after a lot of guys have hit the course early after drinking coffee on the way, it creates a log jam in the restroom. And so I'm standing there waiting as he comes out and we make eye contact, and it was uncomfortable, because it's like no one likes to have any type of eye contact in those situations.
No.
Like, look, just let me get in there and take care of this business so I can get out on the course.
I hope he didn't stick his hand out to shake your hand.
No, I'm not. I'm not even fist bumping in those spots.
Right.
I am alarmed. I don't want to get into it right now. There's a lot of things that alarm me with public behavior. It's like, you're going to do that? It's like, wait a second. I feel like Larry David. Like you just came out of the stall. The sink's right here. You're just going to walk out, huh? I don't understand. Like, that's beyond my understanding. You're not going to wash your hands? Like, I can understand why Larry David acts the way he does, because he sees stuff like that, and he just can't be like, what are you doing there? The sink's right here. Or like the Seinfeld where Jerry's on the date, and I think the gal he's with knows the guy who runs the restaurant. Oh, Jerry, I'm going to make you a good meal, and I'll take care of you. Right. And Jerry goes to use the restroom, and he sees the guy come out of the stall, fixes his hair. He's like, oh, Jerry, just don't worry. I'll take care of you. And he walks out, doesn't wash his hands. And then Jerry can't eat the food.
Then he sees him in the kitchen, I think, tossing a pizza or doing some pasta with his hands. Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah.
All right, last night, the Blazers, they played a terrific first half, and DeAndre Ayton was dominating the game, had a double-double, 12 and 10 at halftime, and then he gets hurt, doesn't come back, and then we saw the Heat just methodically do what they do in that second half with their, quote, Heat culture. But, man, Jimmy Butler's a darn good basketball player. 22 points, 9 assists. He can do so many different things. He's like your modern NBA player where he can handle the rock as a power forward. He can run the offense. He can work off ball. He's a great defender, but he just led his teammates down the stretch, and they executed the way you would expect an Eric Spoelstra team to execute. What did you see there?
Well, they don't even really have a legit point guard on that team. They tried to get one, I understand, in the offseason, but they didn't get him.
Didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't work out. So when they really need him to, Jimmy Butler is their point guard. He can be that guy because he's a great passer. I mean, he throws bullets out there. I mean, he was throwing hard passes, but they execute so well. They're so well coached. Anybody they play in the Eastern Conference in the playoffs is going to get out coached because none of those guys in the East can stack up to him. Maybe Nick Nurse, because I haven't seen enough of Nick. I know he's a good coach. He'll out-coach the guy in Boston and the guy in Milwaukee, though, and we'll see what happens in the playoffs. Nobody wants to play them, I'm sure.
But you're not going to out-prepare Eric Spoelstra.
They're always ready, Chad. It's incredible. And Heat culture is a real thing. They talk about it. They even now have it on their floor.
Which is ridiculous. I get tired of that. It's like, okay, great. You have great culture. Good for you.
Yeah.
But putting it on your court is ridiculous. But I do respect Eric Spoelstra. And not only that, but he's got the greatest tan in the history of tans. He looks pretty darn good. Life down in Miami does not suck.
Yeah.
But again, that's part of the organization. I don't care about their heat culture nonsense because I think that's overplayed a bit. What I do know they have is ownership, giving power to Pat Riley, who has groomed and prepared his head coach. And there's total synergy between ownership, Pat Riley, and Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah.
And when you have that type of support, there's no misunderstandings about what needs to be done. The players, when they come in, understand the system and what they're trying to accomplish, and you're expected to do it that way. And they're able to get the most out of the players that they got.
I think, too, Chad, they have a great developmental system. They will take players. They will take players who've had a year in Europe or playing for somebody else, and you don't hear from them for a while. All of a sudden, they come in off the bench and make shots. They have done that with people that weren't high picks, weren't sought-after players. Players have been released. I mean, who were some of those guys that are playing quality minutes for them right now? It's amazing what they do in developing guys. I mean, they've turned Duncan Robinson into a really good player. I mean, gosh, he can really shoot the ball. And now he goes to the basket with a little bit of authority.
And he was the key in the third quarter. He led them with 11 points in the period when they made that comeback and outscored the Blazers by 14 in the quarter and went in to the fourth with a small lead. It was powered by him.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just think Jimmy Butler, he doesn't get the respect he deserves. He's just one of the best basketball players in the game today. He's one of the best basketball players I've seen. I like the way he competes on both ends. And, you know, there was question about how he would respond to that situation down in Miami when he went there, right?
Yeah.
Because of what happened in Minnesota. But I think he was craving the type of structure and direction he's getting from Eric Spoelstra.
They're really good at that. They have rules that they really enforce, but then they allow players to be themselves. And Jimmy Butler, to be honest, he paces himself during the season.
Yeah.
You don't get the same Jimmy Butler in the first 30 games of the year.
No.
He's coasting a little bit. But you know what? He's like 36 years old now. He knows his body and he knows the NBA. He's not going to give it out to you in the first part of the season. But, man, when those playoffs start, you don't want to see him coming.
If your nickname is Playoff Jimmy, you don't just get that for no reason.
He might be pretty good in the postseason.
You get that because you ball out, which is amazing. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the show. When we come back, we'll give you the latest on Damian Lillard. Apparently, Milwaukee is not the greatest place in the world to live.
Seems to have caught him by surprise.
All right, so we'll get to that. Eric Bjornsson, Super Bowl champ, coming up to talk about his combine experience at 420. Mike Oakes is with us, Chad Doing and Dwight James, Rip City Drive. Sean Hyken stopping by at 520. Hey, what's going on? 4 o'clock chat here. Hope you're enjoying your Wednesday afternoon in the very wet Northwest. Trailblazers, tough loss last night to the Heat, up 10 at halftime and lose by 10. DeAndre Ayton had a double-double at halftime but left the game, did not return for the second half. He fell on his wrist. X-rays negative. More tests are coming. Portland will kick off a 3-game road trip Friday in Memphis. Tip-off at 5. I'll have game day starting at 2:30. Back-to-back nights in Memphis. They finish out the 3-game road trip Monday in Minnesota against the Timberwolves. And they'll kick off a 6-game homestand a week from tonight at against Oklahoma City at Moda Center. Sean Hyken going to join us at 5:20 and talk hoops. NFLPA surveys are out. The Super Bowl champion Chiefs ranked 31st. We'll have more on that coming up at 5 o'clock. And we'll talk with Eric Bjornsson, former Cowboy and Super Bowl champion, former Husky national title as well at 4:20. I need you to reach out to Carrie Agers and see if you get a hold of some of that free spaghetti factory for me, because tonight, couldn't do it last night on Isaac's birthday because I had the Blazer
you're taking
game.
him out tonight, right?
Yeah, and he wants to go to Spaghetti Factory because he eats like a hippopotamus. Like, it's just amazing how much food that growing man can consume. And he shovels, like, there's certain foods I love to watch him eat because I marvel at how quickly he shovels it in. Spaghetti would be right there in the top 5. Popcorn's one of them. But it's amazing to watch him eat spaghetti. He loves it there. But the problem is that he likes to eat so much that I know it's going to cost me a couple of bucks tonight. So reach out to Carrie and see if you can hook me up with some of that free spaghetti factory he's got his hands on. I need some of that, man.
You'd have a better chance of getting it from him than I would. He'd give it to you.
Well, you think I have a better chance with him than you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might.
Well, he would, because
I've scratched his back in the past.
Yeah.
A couple
I
of
think
times.
So, yeah.
All right, so that's what's going on tonight.
Good for Isaac. Do they have a spaghetti factory in Vancouver, or do you have to come over here?
Well, of course they have one in Vancouver, but that's not good enough for him, so he wants to go to Portland because he wants to go on a little journey. So
yeah, that's right.
That's a real pain in the ass. So if I'm just being quite frank with you, it's like, wait, it's not good enough to go to the one in Vancouver. Now I got to drive back into town and back into Portland. Okay, it's your birthday, so I can do that. But it's like, come on. It's just a killer. It's like, well, there's one. Oh, well.
Do they still have one spaghetti with steak? They used to have, like, you get a little steak with your spaghetti.
I don't know. I don't eat there too often unless I'm taking him there. And usually I don't eat. I just watch him eat, you know?
Oh, really? You don't eat spaghetti?
No, the calories it's just too much.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I go to a restaurant with people and I just don't eat. I just watch people eat. I'll drink something, but I'm just like, I have reached a point in my life where I don't want to be a hassle to others based on my unique eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I don't care. You do you. I'm going to do me. You do you. I don't care what you eat. I don't care where we go. If there's something there I can eat, that's fine. But I'm not going to be the guy that's like, I'm not going to go. I just go and sit. And if they have something I can eat, I do it. If not, then I don't care. It doesn't bother me. Yeah. I have removed, after about 30 years of doing this, I have removed all emotional attachment to food. And so I just don't care.
That's nice. That's a good place to be in life, really.
So that's what's going on tonight. All right. So this is bizarre to me, but I want to read this to you because apparently the transition for Dame has been a little bit difficult going to Milwaukee, as you might expect. But according to Dame, and this is out from NBA Central, he admits that life in Milwaukee is lonely, Godfather, and doesn't have much of a life. Go to practice, go home, watch boxing, play video games. Man, I type in the boxing website Fight Hype on YouTube 100 times and pray for something new to be on there. So that's part of the struggle for Dame. And I think what's going on here, Godfather, it's not just a move to Milwaukee. I mean, look, you have to look really hard to find a more brutal city to live and play in than Portland, Oregon as an NBA player. But he found it in Milwaukee. He really did.
Yeah.
Because it's cold there.
Yeah, real cold.
You think the weather sucks here? Go out to Milwaukee and you freeze your balls off. Like, I don't need that in my life. He doesn't need that in his life. But for the first time in his life, he really did set up his entire Lillard empire here in the Portland area. So family, friends, kids, everything's here, right? And then all of a sudden you get traded. And this is the part of being an athlete that's tough. He has to pick up a move he goes through the divorce, and now kids are here, so he's separated from everything that he's known for over a decade in the NBA. And it's not just the adjustment to, I mean, think of it like this. You go to a new team, and you have one buffoon as a coach, and then all of a sudden Doc Rivers is your coach.
Yeah.
That would be enough of an adjustment on its own, but when you combine that with no kids, going through a divorce, in a new town, doesn't have his same connections and network there, like it's a lot different for him. And I think maybe you don't understand it until after you've been on the ground for a while, and it starts to sink in. It's like, oh, yeah, this is a little bit different than what I anticipated. I'm sure he likes being on the floor with Giannis, but that's only for a small period of time during all the other times he has to spend in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's an element of you made your bed, now you got to sleep in it.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. But the bottom line here is when guys who play professional sports who are living the ultimate dream and they're making many millions of dollars, I think it falls on deaf ears when you're talking to ordinary average Joes about how difficult your life is.
Absolutely.
So let me get this straight. You got to go play in an NBA game, and you go home to a crib that's probably pretty large, and you play video games. And then you struggle to find the boxing videos that you want on YouTube.
It's a rough life, Chad.
Any other guy that hears that who is dealing with 3 kids who are crazy, a wife that's on his ass about this, that, and everything else, and going to work to a job that he probably doesn't like too much, living in a city that he may not be a big fan of, but he's doing it all because he wants to take care of his family. Here's something like that. It's like, come on, man. What are you talking about?
And a lot of people nowadays have a job they're not sure they're going to have 6 months from now. You know, I mean, everything's kind of tentative right now.
Yeah. Goes back to what we were talking about yesterday. Unless you're Monty Williams getting punked by the NBA officials in New York when your team is trying to get to 10 wins on the year,
right. Yeah.
You don't feel sorry for a millionaire.
Yeah.
But, you know, I like Dame. So I would imagine it's a big change for him. Like I've told you before with a lot of these NBA players, right? You know, I always thought that Dame probably had one of the more enviable positions in the league. Not because he was on a great basketball team like the Warriors or the Celtics, but because he was on a team where he was the toast of the town. It was his town. He was beloved.
Mm-hmm.
He was making a supermax contract and was able to go out there and play without the intense media attention that you get in New York or Boston or Philadelphia or one of those other markets, right? Look at all the other NBA players who have made change or forced their way out, and they're still searching for that peace and happiness, and they haven't found it. Kevin Durant struggled with that. Kyrie Irving has struggled with that.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are always on the move and looking, and they can't find it. And sometimes you realize, like, oh, it was better in my former place than what I thought it would be. And I think that's part of the reason why Dame probably had second thoughts when he's like, hey, let's just call off this trade request, and I'll just keep it there.
Yeah. Joe Cronin had a chance not to do what he did. Dame had kind of come to grips with staying here once he found out he couldn't go to Miami.
Yeah. So, that's tough.
There's the other end of the spectrum spoken on Twitter by Gary Sheffield Jr.
Yeah, the great Gary Sheffield, his son, who I am a big fan of.
And don't you think Gary Sheffield Jr. spent part of his youth, I would think, in Milwaukee where his father played for the Brewers?
Did Gary play for the Brewers?
Mm-hmm.
He did?
Mm-hmm.
I saw him play for the Dodgers, the Padres,
The
and
Marlins.
Yankees. Yeah, he was around. He was a darn good baseball player, one of my favorites.
Borderline Hall of Famer, yeah.
Oh, man, I saw him live multiple times, but the way he would hover over the plate, wielding that bat like a sword, that was a thing of beauty.
They call it cowtailing. He used to cowtail his bat. It would be cocked behind his head, and when he uncoiled, it was like a cobra.
It was. Here's what Gary Sheffield Jr. said. Could you imagine making $400,000 a day for a maximum of 48 minutes of work and then having to drive to your 30,000 square foot home in your Lamborghini to play video games until you're ready for bed? Hang in there, brother.
Oh, God. Not a lot of sympathy there.
No, definitely not.
And I imagine that's the way a lot of people feel, really.
Yeah. It's like, come on. I mean, if you, and again, but this is where it's all relative, right? Because we have our situations, and there are people that would love to be in our situation.
Right.
We look at other people's situations like, I could use that. But everyone's got their difficulty, right?
Yeah.
Heck, Tom Brady was married to the most beautiful woman on the planet, and she may have been having an affair with the Karate Kid, and he had to learn to live with it.
Yeah. The Karate Kid. She's having an affair with, actually, the Karate Kid. Right?
Literally, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, Milwaukee. Miami, my guess is your quality of life in Miami would be a little bit better than Milwaukee, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Well, hopefully they can figure it out in the court. Gosh, can you imagine how much of a pain in the ass going to practice and listen to Doc yell at you all day long is? Like, that's got to be exhausting for players. Seriously, like, are you kidding me? I've heard players a lot over the last week with all the podcasts that came out through NBA All-Star Weekend. Stan Van Gundy, I love listening to players talk about him, too, because he was always yelling at players, too. No, guys, that's not how we do it. Just always on them. And you know Doc is probably just always yelling. Hoarse voice, just out of control.
His players are already saying, guys, just remember this. We don't want to get a 3-1 lead in the playoffs.
No.
Because Doc always blows those.
He bothers me. He's always annoyed me, Godfather. And I'm not sure. Let's see here. Brewers. Oh, he opened up with the Brewers. So Gary Sheffield.
Came up as a Brewer. Yeah.
Started out with the Brewers in 88, then went to the Padres, then went to the Marlins, Dodgers, Braves, Yankees, Tigers, Mets.
Tried on a few uniforms.
I went with my boy Steve back in the summer of 2001. Saw him play the Mets and Dodgers from Dodger Stadium. And that night, Gary Sheffield, I have to look up the stats again, but he was like 4 for 4. Home run, double, single. It was like just all over the place, man. Just an animal. I mean, he had some big years for the Dodgers. I love watching him with the Yankees with that short porch when he could just mash the ball. He was a good player. Did you ever get a chance to interview him?
I don't recall it. No. My buddy Trev managed him, though. Troublehorn managed him in Milwaukee, I believe.
Did he like him?
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah.
So he was on that Marlins team that won the World Series when you were down there.
Yeah, he was on that team. They were loaded. That's the year, they kept adding guys, bulking up to win that one year, and then it was like an NBA tanking the next year. It was just amazing. They had Mike Piazza for a while in Miami on that team, but I don't even know if he played a game for him. They just kept him there and then traded him for somebody else. They had a real lineup, though, of good players.
Yeah, the one thing Dame did point out is that he grew accustomed to here in Portland, like after games, he would go home and like the entire family was at the house.
Oh, yeah.
Kids, family members, extended family, they're all there. So it's like a big family reunion every freaking game.
Well, and it was close enough to Oakland, too. A lot of his guys came up here all the time, and he had a big enough house to take care of those guys. They could all sleep there and eat there and everything else.
Dude, that'd be pretty nice to have that type of Jake to where you could have a crib of that size to where if people wanted to come up and stay, like, dude, I got plenty of room. Just come up and hang with me.
Yeah, and I think he just built a new house. That's what we understood, was that he just got done with a new house that had a gym in it.
I heard that basketball court. I talked to one of the guys. I think he called into the show.
He did.
He said that basketball court was amazing in terms of state of the art.
Wow. He gave up a lot when he left here.
I dreamed about having one of those when I was a kid, too.
Sure.
My own basketball hoop. Are you kidding me? Indoors? Can't imagine that. NBA players, I think, who was the first player I saw that had that? It was like MJ or something. First indoor hoop at home. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You just have your own basketball court in your crib? Who does that?
Yeah, Myers Leonard had that here in Portland.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You don't have to go anywhere. You just go downstairs. I'm going to go hit the gym and go get some work in. That's a great song right here. Hall & Oates.
Mike Oakes is doing a great job with the music today. We're talking Eagles, and he's playing Eagles stuff. I like that.
This is right up there near the top of my favorite songs, Everything Your Heart Desires. The live version on Live from Daryl's House is spectacular. First song that he ever played on Live from Daryl's House in the very first episode was this song right here.
Really? Did he have somebody there with him that time?
It was just him and his band. Yeah. Oates, not there. Sorry,
no,
Oates.
I knew that, but he's, famous for getting quality people to come up there and join in.
No, first episode was just him solo with his bandmates. All right, we'll come back. Eric Bjornsson, Super Bowl champion, going to talk Combine coming up next. Hey, Godfather, when do new episodes of the Dynasty drop in? Did you say Friday?
My recollection is they come on Friday because I think that's the day it started. Usually they just stick with that day. I hate it, though. Netflix is the only one that puts a whole season out at one time.
Yeah.
That's the best. But the rest of them, they just trickle them in over time.
I hate it. I want more episodes now because I'm enjoying the watch. I shouldn't have to wait for it.
No.
Give it all to me at once.
Yeah.
All right. Very happy to go to the phones. This guy is one of our favorite guests. He won a national championship with the Washington Huskies and a Super Bowl title with the Dallas Cowboys. And joining us right now is Eric Bjornson, who's back on the show. Eric, good afternoon. Thanks for making time, buddy.
Hey, no worries. Anytime, man. We guys just talking about Dynasty?
Yes. Have you watched it yet?
Of course.
It's awesome. What are your thoughts so far on what you've seen?
I mean, if you look really close in the first episode, you could see Bledsoe throw me a pass in practice. He got to look pretty hard, though.
Dude, okay, so, what Dwight and I were talking about, and I want your impression on this, Eric, but I think Drew Bledsoe, and I've talked to him before, and of course you know him, I think he's one of the coolest guys on the planet, but the way that he handled that, and I think it was Teddy Bruschi who said it, he goes, when I saw Drew Bledsoe taking the situation in, the fact that he had lost his job to Brady and was doing whatever he could to help him get ready for the Super Bowl and help the team out, he goes, that's when the Patriot way began. So what are your thoughts on the way Drew come off so far in these series?
Pretty great. He deserves to. I mean, he really was so classy. I mean, I wasn't there then. I was there the year before. So I had some peripheral, knowledge and awareness of the dynamic. But, man, I mean, just even as a fan, you think back to, like, when Jim Kelly, missed some of the playoffs and Frank Reich had that miraculous comeback. But as soon as Jim Kelly got healthy, he got his job back. I mean, it was just kind of the unwritten rule in the NFL. You don't lose your job because of an injury. So, especially that guy who was the franchise quarterback. So, I mean, and he's Drew is a friend of mine, and he's just a great guy. Like, he doesn't come off as like a big timer guy, but he is deeply competitive, and he was very confident in his abilities, and he wanted nothing more than be that guy. And to have it sort of yanked twice, right? I mean, he got healthy, didn't get his job, and then to go into Pittsburgh and do what he did, and then not even get the nod to the Super Bowl. Man, he did definitely handle it with class. Hats off to Drew for that. I feel like he's coming off pretty good.
Eric, I have to follow up on that just for a second. How much guts did it take for Belichick to basically put his job on the line, knowing that the owner loved Drew Bledsoe, and he went with Brady? And it's like, if that didn't work, I think he was out of there, don't you?
I think you could be right. I mean, the year I was there was a tough year. I'm not a fan. He was a hard guy to play for, and ultimately he, cut me. So there's no love lost there.
Yeah.
I think the most incredible thing he's done as a coach. I don't dispute his defensive. He's a defensive genius. You can make a case he's never really won without Brady at the helm.
True.
Anywhere. It's incredible. So I mean, if you really drill down on it, like, first of all, it starts with the fact that he kept him in the first place. Because the year before, people don't remember, they kept 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Brady was the 4th string quarterback. I mean, teams don't even keep 3 anymore, let alone 4, because you're handicapping like a lineman, linebacker, DB, receiver, right? It's a pretty valued roster spot. 4 quarterbacks makes no sense. They had John Fraser as a backup. They had Michael Bishop, who was a high draft pick they really liked. And I remember going through training camp and thinking, this kid Brady's good, but he's not going to make the team. Like, I didn't think there was any way he would make the team. And they kept 4. It's incredible. So I think he deserves credit for, A, keeping him in the first place, and B, and then the next year, Michael Bishop they got rid of, Freeze retired, and they brought in Damon Heward, who ironically just got off the phone with 5 minutes ago. Damon was brought in to be the backup. He signed a 3-year, $3 million deal, and Brady beat him out in training camp. So at the end of the day, he does deserve credit for recognizing the potential that Tom had, and he does deserve credit for keeping him, because I don't think most coaches would have. Most coaches would have let Bledsoe step in.
Hey, Eric, what was your impression of Robert Kraft back in the day?
I didn't have a strong, and he seemed like a nice guy. He wasn't around the way Jerry Jones was around. I mean, Jerry was like, in our offensive meetings, every practice, like he was really around. Like occasionally you'd see Mr. Kraft, game day on the sideline as you're running out or something like that. But I mean, Jerry was everywhere.
Was Jerry cool?
I think there was a brief period where Jerry thought, I could probably just be the head coach. I really think that. There was a year where Chan Gailey was the head coach, and he sat in every single offensive meeting, every single one the entire season. And he had a play script. He had a practice plan. He had the offensive script for practice every day. And even for him, it was a high level of engagement. And I think in his mind, he was like, why don't I just coach? I don't know. I could be wrong, but it sure felt like that.
But can you imagine?
Maybe he was just deeply evaluating Chan. Maybe he was like, second year, I need to see if this guy's doing a good job or not. I don't know, but I don't think I've ever heard of a owner sitting in on every offensive meeting for the entire season.
It's crazy.
Yeah, pretty wild.
We're talking with Eric Bjornson, but Eric, think about this. You went from Barry Switzer to Bill Belichick. Like, could you find two guys on the opposite end of the spectrum than those two?
No. I mean, I did have Chan Gailey for 2 years, who was probably somewhere in the middle, but yeah, no, it was it was complete. I couldn't believe. I came from I played for Don James, and Jim Lambright, who were pretty, ran a tight ship, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you sat up straight in the meetings, and you didn't. You knew who the boss was, right? And then my first year in the NFL, it was like, I don't want to say the inmates running the asylum, but it was a lot looser than I was used to. And then when 5 years there and then going to New England, it felt like I was back in college again, because it was, you could hear a pin drop in the team meetings, and he just set a different tone, and it was very different than what went on in Dallas for sure.
Eric, I hear people talking about Belichick being a bit of a bully and really rough on players, no matter who they were, Brady or anybody else. Did you see that?
I don't want to say I experienced like a bullying situation. It was very old school. I didn't, you got grown men with wives and children, and you're treating them like little kids.
Yeah.
It was pretty demeaning in some ways. He definitely, I mean, here's an example. We had bye week, where usually your body's banged up. It's like week 11 or something, and usually you kind of have a light week of practice, let everyone recover, get some extra treatment, and then you let them go. I think Friday would be the last week. Morning practice Friday, everyone's got flights, wherever for the weekend, and you recover. We had a full freaking scrimmage with refs in the stadium, tackle to the ground, like during bye week.
Wow.
Like, this is not what I expected.
Wow.
And then the last day, that was like on a Wednesday, and then the last day, everyone's got flights. Everyone's sort of distracted. We go 45 minutes into practice, and he blows the whistle and says, "This is BS. Line it up for stretching. We're starting the whole thing over again." I was like, I got a flight, man. Like,
oh my goodness.
Hopefully we're not out here too. So we were out there for like 2.5 hours on the getaway day during bye week. So that was a rough time. I mean, I don't know. There's also stories. A good friend of mine, Ted Johnson, that had a concussion, and he was in a red jersey because he had a concussion. And one day he got to his locker and he didn't have a red jersey, and Belichick made him practice, and he took another hit, and I think he's got long-term effects to this day. And I think it was ill-advised, tough guy mentality. Maybe not here to completely just blow up Belichick, but you tell him I'm not the biggest fan.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I met Ted. Ted is a heck of a guy. What a nice guy Ted is. We're talking with Eric Bjornson here on the Rib City Drive. All right. Before we get to your combine experience, which wasn't exactly what you probably anticipated, we were wondering, Like, what type of preparations did you go through with your people before you got to the combine in terms of, did you go over anything in terms of what you might be asked, how to handle yourself? Like, what do you remember from that time, Eric?
Yeah, I remember it fairly well. I don't remember, specific questions, but it's a good question, and I think that would be a good advice. I did not prep from an interview standpoint. I guess I felt like I could handle myself when it came to that. My prep was solely the testing and the physical and the 40. I mean, I trained for the 40 for months, and I was really going in as a receiver, so I didn't have to bench press, which was kind of nice. All I worked on was my speed. Like, that was the only thing I worked on. I got to the point where I ran a pretty good 40. So what to lay it all out, the process, yeah. So there's the interview process. There's the testing, the running the 40 and the cone drills and the throwing and catching. Then there's a whole day where you're basically at the hospital getting scanned, an X-ray or MRI of any injury you've ever had that they're worried about. And then you also go into a room with the doctors pulling all your joints and see if everything's intact. So the interview part, I think I probably met with, maybe half the teams. I mean, it was one of these things where there's a suite for each team has a giant suite, at least back in Indy back in the day. And it's a series of job interviews. It's really exhausting. Some teams will keep you in there for a half hour. Some teams will keep you there a little bit longer. They'll have kind of their own interview process. And I remember the Giants notoriously had this, 2.5 hour personality test. It was like 450 questions.
Wow.
You got to, everyone hated it. You got a free T-shirt or a hat for each team you met with. Like,
it's all worth it
with a bunch of gear. Well, the Giants gave you like a full-blown starter jacket back then.
Oh, dope.
So they tried to really sweeten the deal so you would take their test. They're like, Dion, I remember the famous story of Dion when I don't know if they had the test anymore, but back then they had it. And Dion was like, what pick do you guys have? And he was there like, I don't know, 12. Like, look, I'm not going to be there at 12, so I'm not taking the test later.
That's great.
But I don't remember the interview part. I just remember being exhausting. You kind of had to try to be on. And then I remember going to I got a couple scans. I didn't have major injuries, but I remember being in the room and having like a different team. Like one team was on my right arm, one team was my left arm, one team on my right leg, one team on my left leg, kind of pulling at the same time. And I was thinking, wow, this is pretty surreal. And I remember the Seahawks trainer or doctor was in the room, and he knew I was from Washington. He's like, hey, just so you know, this is a good sign. If they're checking stuff, that means they're interested. So don't take this the wrong way. And then when it got to the testing, right, the most important thing for me, because I was a bubble guy, like, hey, is this guy even going to get drafted? He's really got to show out at the combine. And I the night before the most important day, they had big buffet, and I had went through the thing. I specifically remember them bringing in a new vat of burgers. Grabbed a burger. I did notice it does look a little bit on the rare side, but I like a rare burger. Ate the burger, but 2 hours later, stomach started bothering me. Fast forward to 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the bathroom, both ends. Worst food poisoning in my life, and I am just a disaster. And I got up the next day, and I was like, I can barely walk 40 yards, let alone run 40 yards. And they're like, okay, well, it is what it is. Because you're not working out. And the worst part is, like, back then, the big time guys wouldn't work out. They would just choose not to run because the track was slow, so they didn't want to put up a bad time. But they didn't really tell you why. They announced so and so is not running. I think if you were like a top 10 pick, they understand why. But a guy like me, they're like, hey, this Bjornsson guy not running. And I imagine most of the teams are like, what's up with this guy? Who does he think he is? But I just couldn't do it. Now, the silver lining was every team in the league came to see Napoleon Kaufman and Mark Bruner. So I got to run on my home track, and my home track was very fast. And I ran good times for it. So it ended up being better for me to run on my own track and not have a bad time out there in Indy. So it kind of worked out for me. But at the time, I thought my career was over before it started because I didn't even get to work out at the combine.
Thank God for those guys. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, the one thing we were curious about, of all these different, because I think teams, they're still searching for the perfect formula to know who to pick and who's going to be the guy that will hit and they'll strike gold with. But of all the information, like if you were looking at players, Eric, whether it be the medicals or the interviews or the measurables like the 40-yard dash, and what type of data do you think is the most important to be able to determine how a guy might perform in the NFL?
Well, I think the measurables are pretty darn important. I mean, if you're a successful D tackle in college and you're only 270 pounds, it's probably not going to translate. So I think for some positions, the measurables are pretty key, depending on the position, 40 time. I mean, they go pretty deep in their research, though. Like, they teams called my high school coach. They talked to my position coach. Like, they did a pretty deep dive into what kind of character is this guy. I would put that up there, too, for an important – I mean, this is a big investment, especially for a high draft pick. I would want to know, is this guy a good teammate? Is this guy a leader? I mean, what's his work ethic like in the off season? Is he a weight room guy? I think it all factors in. And if you turn out the guy's not a good guy, or the teammates don't love him, or he's super talented but doesn't work very hard, those would all be red flags. I'd want to. I remember I spent a little time with the Raiders, and I didn't make the team, but my last year I was in training camp with the Raiders, so I was around Gruden for 6 months or so, and he would always ask guys, "Do you like football?" He was just kind of this hyper guy. But I think it's a good question. Like, do you really love football? Because if you don't love it, you're probably not going to reach your full potential. Like, if you love it, you're probably going to maximize whatever ability you have. So I know that didn't explicitly answer your question. I think all those things factor in. I think the measurables are huge certainly for certain positions, but I'd want to know about the guy for particularly for those early picks to make sure I'm not drafting a guy that's not going to reach his full potential or be a good teammate.
I've got a great Raiders story for you. Anthony Newman, former Duck, and of course he played in the NFL for a long time. You probably know him. He went to the Raiders, and this is later in his career, and he was at practice one day, and the team was breaking up into their position groups, and he said that you could smell Al Davis from quite a ways away because he wore strong cologne.
You didn't hear that from me? That's very true. You could smell him from 40 yards away.
Yes.
And it was crazy.
Yeah, he wore the polo, and Anthony Newman. Yeah, it was strong.
Yeah.
And so what he said was
standing there, and sorry, I'll leave it.
Oh, no. What he said is that Al Davis came. He could smell him coming, and he came out on the practice field, and he goes, "Hey, Newman, come here." And Anthony was confused because he's like, "Do I go to my position group or do I go talk to Al?" And he thought, "Well, I should probably go talk to Al." So he went over to talk to Al, Eric, and Al asked him. He said, "Hey, Newman, I'm curious. Why did you switch from running back to safety in high school?" And Newman was like, literally blown away that Al Davis knew about his position change back in his high school days. How crazy is that?
It is crazy, and that didn't surprise me though, because he also knew that I played quarterback in high school. Now I was from the Bay Area, which didn't hurt, but I was blown away. He asked me that once too, and but it is crazy because I mean, if I saw Jerry Jones today, he would remember me, but I don't think Bob Kraft would, and yet. Al, even in his later years, would know stuff like that and took that much of an interest. I remember you could walk in a room, and if Al had been there within hours, you'd know it.
Whoa.
and it was like this pungent, aftershave.
Yeah.
And it's funny, he got his hair cut at this barber that I grew up going to in my neighborhood. But I remember standing there, and he was like 40 yards away, and I was like in the huddle. I was like, I can smell Al from here. And Bolitnikoff was the receivers coach, and he looked up and said, "I've been smelling that crap for 40 years."
That's great.
Oh, dude. Well,
I got one last question. Put on your GM cap just for a minute. You're taking Caleb Williams number one, no doubt about it. How do you feel about the quarterbacks?
I would. I know he had maybe some rocky starts, rocky performances this year. And I think people inherently want to take down the one that or find cracks in the top ones. But I felt like the kid was phenomenal quarterback, and I would take him for sure if I had that pick. That's me. The other ones I think are good. I mean, I think Drake May is probably going to be great, and I'm obviously partial to Michael Penix, but I'm going with Caleb Bryant that top pick, and not even thinking twice about it.
Yeah, that's the same way. All right, you won a national championship with the Huskies, Super Bowl title with the Cowboys. Had a bad experience with the hoodie. Not a surprise. It's Eric Bjornson here on the Rip City Drive. Eric, you're the man.
I have to lose now.
You got nothing to lose now.
That's the kind of effect that you've heard, like guys like who are still worried about what they say in the media.
Yeah.
Right. When they're on other teams, it's like I've been out of the league for 25 years almost, and I still worry. I wonder if Belichick got a relative that's going to hear this and tell him. That's just the effect that he has on guys. I cut you off again. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, hey, I've had bosses in radio before that, many guys I know loved, but my experience with them was different, and that usually happens when you get fired by a guy or cut. Right? Your experience with them is a little bit different than somebody else, and that's okay.
True. I also saw Rob Ryan, Rex's brother, was the linebackers coach. I saw him at an A's game in the Bay Area years later.
Yeah.
And I said hi, and he's like, by the way, you were there the worst year. Because it got a lot better after that.
Yeah.
Because, we didn't win. He was trying to lay down the law and, set the tone. And but I've also talked to guys that said it was still miserable even when they won.
Yeah, I think Brady would probably say that. That's coming later in this series dynasty. But we hear the last 3 or 4 episodes are going to be dynamite.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
That's great. I can't wait to watch it. Dude, thanks for your time, Eric. You're awesome, man. We love talking with you, buddy.
No, anytime. I love it. Appreciate it. I don't get a lot of interview requests these days, so anytime, fellas.
You got it, man. We'll talk to you soon. There's Eric Bjornson. Isn't it great to get the inside story from a guy like that's been there and done that?
Well, it was perfect because we didn't even call him for that reason, but to get all that stuff on the Patriots while this documentary's going on, that was perfect. That was great.
And frankly, based on what we know, not a surprise that Bill Belichick's is a miserable human being.
Yeah.
Dude, there are times where Kraft's talking about this, where it's like he's paying this guy many millions to coach his team. They'd walk by each other in the hallway and not even a hi from Bill. I'm sorry, but that's just not proper. You got to be some type of a-hole to do that.
Well, if you're Robert Kraft and you've called your head coach a schmuck, well, that tells you something.
That's amazing. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, what's wrong with cereal for dinner?
Nothing.
Yeah, the Rip City Drive. This is one of the finest songs from 1987. Paul Carrick, Don't Shed a Tear for Me. Also the lead man for Squeeze and for Mike and the Mechanics. Love this song. I'm normally not a big lyric guy. I have no idea what they're singing about. I think I know what this song's about.
Save it.
Locked door on a candy store is what you are.
Save it. Go no further.
I love this too. I see this in reports all the time about unwanted advances. What I'd like to know is, have I ever given a wanted advance? I don't think so. There's probably not been a time in my 48 years of existence where I've given a wanted advance to a lady.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Just go away.
Yeah. The best ones, you just had to spend so much time talking them into listening to you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, and you know this thing, like, just please shut your mouth.
Yeah.
What's a wanted advance in the life of the Chad? There's no such thing. Oh, my goodness. Let's go out to the phones. Eastside Mark looks like he's got a rideshare issue. And Mark, welcome back to the show, my friend. What's cracking out there on the roadways?
How you doing, Chad?
Fabulous. How about you?
Godfather, sir.
Yeah.
How you?
Good.
Good. So, all's well at the station. Well, you know, you're talking about a former passenger of mine, and I had to let you know. Now, we're going to say Uber because I don't drive for them anymore.
Okay.
So, yeah. But I lost my mind, thought I found love with the prettiest girl in high school, and I moved out to Prineville for like 6 weeks. So I was driving out of Redmond Airport, and I get a guy named Drew, and we start visiting, and he was a big man, He sat in the front. Big dude. Quarterbacks are big. So he sat in the front, and I took him and dropped him off at his about $15 million of mansion in the shadows.
Yeah.
He was checking on his brakes because I guess he makes wine and stuff now.
Yeah. He's got his own winery out there.
Yeah. We talked about coaching our kids. You know, my daughter's in softball, and one of his girls or boys plays football. And then, so the next day, I have a question for you after this. But the next day, I said, I've had my most famous passenger yet on Facebook. And I said, legendary quarterback, Drew Bledsoe. And then, space. Guess what? I got skipped by legendary quarterback, Drew Bledsoe. No tip. No tip.
Huh.
So now, the question is, does he have a ring?
He does. Yeah. He got a ring with the Patriots.
So I guess you got to see legendary then.
He's a big-time quarterback. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I had Diego Valari from the Portland Timbers. Very nice dude, very nice guy. Tipped me very nicely and gave me a beautiful autograph. So it's one of the perks about driving rideshare, besides picking up new pink-haired girlfriends. You know?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the phone call, Mark. Yeah, you don't want to be the no-tip guy.
No.
No tipping pippin'. You don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. That's what happens. Everybody talks about it.
All right, we'll come back, and the NFLPA surveys are out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Might not be the information you expect. We'll explain that coming up next on the Rip City Drive. All right, 5 o'clock. We've got Sean Hyken of the Rose Garden Report who's coming up at 5:20. We'll talk some Blazer basketball, get updates on some of the various injuries. Portland took a loss last night. The big news, DeAndre Ayton went down in the first half. Sprained wrist, did not return for the second half. X-rays were negative. Portland will kick off a 3-game roadie, which starts Friday in Memphis. Tip-off at 5. We'll have game day at 2:30 right here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. The NFLPA surveys are out. The Chiefs did not rank highly. We'll have more on that coming up next on the Rip City Drive, which continues right now. Well, Godfather, I've been a good son this week. I've been sending daily weather reports to my mom and dad who are in Maui right now.
Oh, God. Yeah.
There's nothing better than leaving the place where you're at to a much better place knowing that the weather is just absolute garbage.
Yeah.
It's great, man. The best time to leave town, like you don't want to leave the Northwest too often in the summertime because it's so nice out here. But right now, February, get the heck out of Dodge.
I'm sure it's perfect in Maui, huh?
That's what he told me. He's like, I don't want to go on and on about how perfect it is, but he goes, it's perfect. And then our idiot friend Daniel down in North Phoenix, get a picture from him today, 75 degrees as he's out for a jog with sunshine.
Yeah.
That's good golfing weather.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't beat Phoenix. I'm telling you, it's the best.
What about the old buffoons at the golf course? Were there guys rolling out in the rain gear this morning?
I saw people in the fairway this morning with their umbrellas and their rain gear and gloves. And gosh, you really got to love it to do that.
I hate playing in the rain. It's tough. It's a grind.
It was not only rainy, it was cold, too.
You just can't play your best when the weather's just hot garbage. You can't.
I think cold is harder than rain, really.
No, I don't. I would prefer. I don't
Really?
like either.
Yeah.
The problem with the rain is that once the hands get wet or your clubs get wet or there's any type of moisture there and it starts to impact your grip, that changes the game. It's not the same game. When it's cold, it changes the game sometimes because your fingers don't have the same type of sensation they normally have. You're right. It both sucks. It sucks. They don't have these issues down in Phoenix. They don't have these issues in Maui. Who is it? Don Nelson, the cool coach?
Yeah, Don Nelson.
He's in Hawaii.
Yeah, he owns a good part of that little town, Paia.
Does he golf or smoke weed more?
Oh, he's smoking weed all the time.
He's one of the coolest coaches ever.
Jeez.
I used to love that. I heard back in the days, like after a game, he'd just grab a 6-pack of Miller Lite and crack him in his office. Just chill.
Yeah.
Running innovative offenses at all times. Unafraid to go small.
I've interviewed him after games in his office, and he's sitting there drinking a beer.
Oh, God.
He's a beauty. He was, in his heyday, he was really something.
One of the best.
Yeah, I remember after a game, one of his writers said, well, if you want to meet us after the game, I said, what do you mean us? Oh, me and Don were going out to, and he named this place that I'm not going to disclose. I met him there after I got done with my story. Oh, man, he was in fine form. He was about a 6-pack in, I think, and he was having a great time.
Do coaches do that anymore? Those are days of old?
I think those days are over. He's a little different. He's real old school. I mean, that guy, he's getting up there in age now.
You think Eric Spoelstra's going out with some of the guys from the Miami beat, popping a couple of beverages with them?
No, I think here in Portland he was going out with a bunch of his old UP buddies, I bet.
That's a possibility. That's a darn shame, man. I like hearing about the stories of the old days where you would roll down to Champions right down there on the waterfront and hang out with Jerry Sloan.
Jerry Sloan, Phil Johnson, Mike Sheminsky, their trainer. Man, it was the best. Old AVA stories. Sloan and Van Leer going into the 5th row to beat up hecklers, That was that kind of stuff.
Jerry Sloan's one of the toughest SOBs in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
But what I love about that is that there was like this unspoken rule, understanding. You knew what was on the record and what was off the record.
Yeah.
And he trusted you not to be a dumbass and write something you shouldn't write.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't break that confidence.
Yeah. No, you had that in those days because there weren't that many writers. I mean, there weren't bloggers. There weren't people doing podcasts. It was writers for newspapers. And in some town, that's one guy. So they got to know people. I mean, players, you walk in there and they knew your name. I mean, Barkley was an expert at it. You walk in, hey, Dwight, how's it going? Where's Kerry? You know, it was always that kind of stuff with Barkley. And Karl Malone, Stockton, Jerry, those people, you know, they remember you because you played them so many times. They got to know everybody. It was a pretty tight-knit community. And they weren't chartering either, so you were on planes with them. It was a lot different story then.
So you pretty much knew all the coaches back in the day on some level.
Yeah, the Western Conference more than Eastern.
Yeah, because you guys play them 4 or 5 times a year against those teams.
Yeah, including preseason and stuff. And, you know, nobody did anything bad either. You know, they go and have a couple beers and a plate of nachos and sit around and talk basketball. What more could you ask for? You know, it was really good.
And even if you're not writing specifically about something they're talking about, you're gaining knowledge to help you understand the league on a bigger level.
Oh, unbelievable. So, yeah. Yeah. I remember I told you this. I talked to Jerry about their owner who used to come in the locker room at halftime and after the game and listen to what he said and everything. And I said, God, that must drive you crazy to have your owner looking over your shoulder like that. He goes, oh, no. I want him to see what I have to deal with all the time. And I thought, yeah, I get that too.
Yeah, because if he's there and he sees the nonsense the coach has to deal with on a daily basis, he's more understanding.
Yeah.
So when the coach needs to make a move, the owner's like, yeah, I get it.
He's on the
that
same
clown
page.
out of here.
Yeah.
How cool was Frank Layden?
I kind of missed Frank. I knew him a little bit, but he was kind of gone when I got on the beat. You know, he was still, I think he was GM at that time. So he wasn't traveling with him all the time.
How good was Mike Dunleavy?
I love Mike. I still see him once in a while. When I go to Summer League, he's always there. I like Mike Dunleavy a lot. Good guy. And he's another one. He would tell you stuff. He would. He'd confide in you and trusted you. I heard all kinds of things from Mike. And I thought he was a really genuine good guy.
Was your relationship with Rick Adelman always good?
Yeah, it was.
Did you ever piss him off?
I don't think so. I probably did, and he wouldn't have said anything. That's the way he was. I certainly upset a few players over the years. You know, Jim Paxson, I think I told you,
he didn't talk to you for a while.
About 3 months, he didn't talk to me because I wrote about him with some contact with Ramsey. You know, him and Ramsey, he took Pax out of the game, and they had words coming off. And we were sitting right next to the bench in those days, courtside. So I heard what was said, and I didn't say what was said.
Yeah.
But I said they had words, and they disagreed. He was upset I wrote that.
In those days, if you heard specifics, is that off limits?
It depends on what it was.
Okay.
Like I wrote about Cliff Robinson swearing at PJ because of what he said was insulting, and it was the reason Cliff didn't play in the second half of a game. And people said, well, why didn't he play? Why didn't they use him? Well, it's because this is what Cliff did. And I couldn't say the words, but, I hinted at them.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it was. It was, for a writer, it was a dream. Because like I said, I traveled on the same planes they did. They flew commercial. The travel agent handled the Argonian, and they handled the Blazers. So it was real easy.
How was Cotton Fitzsimmons, the old guy with the Suns?
Awesome. Cotton was great. Had that Southern twang, and he thought, well, you know what? When I was back coaching at Moberly Junior College, because that's kind of where he got his start. He won. I think he won JC national championships there, and he got a boost up. But he'd tell you all kinds of old stories, and he was very good. Just like Jerry, the guy at Sacramento, Jerry
Reynolds.
Jerry Reynolds. He coached. Then he was the TV guy. Great guy. Had all the old stories.
I never had a chance to meet him, but I always liked him.
Oh, man, he's a piece of work. He was really good.
Was Doug Moe cool, or was he crazy?
Yeah, Doug Moe was very cool.
Yeah.
He's another guy. Those Denver writers worshipped him. He treated them like gold. He took them in, told them what was going on so that they would know. He would inform them so that they could write intelligently about that team. Mm-hmm. And like Terry Fry, Terry, I think. Terry just loved Moe. I mean, they were great friends. Yeah.
I got to tell you about what happened to me last night. This is pretty awesome because I'd never been back there and seen it. But there's a guy I know that works for Blazer Broadcasting. Mm-hmm. His name's George, and he's worked there since '87.
Wow.
And he's been on me. He works in the high post room where they work. I took a picture of it. There's like nothing but monitors everywhere,
Yeah.
and their whole focus is running the jumbotron at Motor Center.
Mhm.
So they work on all these cameras. They've got these sweet devices where it's recording the entire game at the same time, but they can roll back and be able to pull the highlights real quick. And he's always told me, he's like, you can come back, I'll let you run some highlights. So I got to run multiple highlights
Oh, my.
on the big board,
They
right?
trusted you or something like
He
that?
did. George
Oh,
trusted
my.
me.
Wow.
But the production, like they've got their director and they've got like 4 or 5 people who are working, and to see the communication and the coordination that goes through with the big board, it blew me away because I'd never seen it up close like that.
Yeah.
But George has been there since '87, and he was talking about how he became close and connected with George Wash, who was the legendary guy who was behind Blazer Broadcasting
Yes.
back in the day, who you know.
Yeah.
And that's how he got his first job and got started there with the Blazers, working that gig once they got the big board with the replay monitor at the Coliseum. And then, of course, they had it at Motor Center. And he brought up a good point. Why is George Wash not in the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame?
I would guess because nobody's nominated him. He should be nominated, and there's a process. Go to the website.
Did you know George pretty well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because George would be on the road with us very often, and he was a pioneer in producing basketball. He came up with some shots that no one had done before. One of them, which is a high end zone camera, I think that's what it was. They called it the Portland position for a camera because it started here with George. And he was not afraid to try new stuff. George was great. And in those days, they had a pretty small crew, and they did a great job with what they had.
Okay, I did not know this, and I don't know if you knew this, but this actually blew my mind because George was giving me the whole breakdown last night. I sat in there for the entire third quarter. What he told me is that every NBA arena, with every single camera that's in the arena, has a straight fiber optics line straight to Secaucus that goes right to NBA headquarters. Every camera that's used for the NBA games in every arena has got a straight fiber optic line to Secaucus, so they can have access to all the data.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know Synergy has a bunch of cameras in there all over
Yes.
in the ceilings and stuff, so they can measure player movement, all
Yeah.
that stuff that they do.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
when you get those replays that come down when a coach is challenged, that's actually replays that no one in that room has anything to do with. That all comes from Secaucus.
Yeah,
They're the ones who are handling that.
and they have more views than TV does, right?
That's right. That is correct.
Yeah,
And so George was in control of like 4 to 6 different cameras, but he told me he's worth at least 20 points a year because when he goes through, like when there's a close call, he'll slow it down purposely if he knows it's possibly a challengeable play because it's going to be up on the big screen, the one the coach is looking at, and he'll slow it down intentionally and try to give the best angle possible. So maybe it's some ammunition for coach to look at and say, we're challenging that play. That's some BS.
yeah.
And I think that's genius, too. But I had no idea that it was that linked up with the league office in terms of what they have access to. But it was neat to be able to, I felt like I was on the Millennium Falcon, man. I was handing that down. He goes, no, move this one slow because you can speed it up, slow it down. You can, all the stuff that they use for that. The technology that goes into Jumbotron just blew my mind.
Yeah.
There's an entire crew that runs just the Jumbotron that's aside from any of the TV production.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. Do you ever walk by Brian Buckwalter? Buck? He
Yes.
does the overhead camera underneath the scoreboard. Watching him do that is
I love
interesting.
it all.
Yeah.
So that's my suggestion for George. We need to get George Wash nominated for the Oregon Sports Hall of Fame.
That's a great idea. I haven't seen George in a while. I hope he's doing okay.
He told me that he and his wife are still alive, getting
George-
older now.
George was a big golfer. Oh, man, he played
Addict.
all the time. Yeah, he was good, too.
I just knew George Wash because his name was always on the credits for Blazer Cable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They had some great people. They had a guy named Joe Bashlow,
Yeah.
who was their technical guy, solved all the problems that they had in there. He was really good, too.
That's great. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Sean Hyken, Rose Garden Report's up next. We'll talk ball with him. All right, Rip City Drive. Our next guest covers your Portland Trailblazers for the Rose Garden Report. You can follow him on Twitter at Hyken. And once again, joining us here on the Rip City Drive, Sean, it's great to have you back on the show, my friend. I hate to start with things that are so annoying and negative, but we got to get updates on certain players. I guess we'll start with this. Have you gotten the latest on DeAndre Ayton, who went down last night? The report after the game from Chauncey was a sprained wrist. X-rays negative. Do we have any new news on DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah, I heard today that they did more exams on him, and they found that it was a right hand sprain, and they said that he's going to be listed as day-to-day, or at least that's what I was told. So as of right now, it's not anything long-term. You know, we'll see what what the injury report looks like tomorrow, whether he's listed as for the game Friday, which is the first of two in Memphis, whether he's listed as out or listed as questionable. But it doesn't as of right now, it doesn't seem like it's anything long-term. Like maybe he misses a few games. It's probably just going to be a matter of pain management, but it's not. I haven't gotten the impression that as of right now, it's going to be some sort of long-term thing.
Good.
Sean, it seemed the indication from Chauncey a day or two ago was that they might not even take Scoot on the road trip. Have you heard anything more with that? Do you think he's going to go with them and have a chance to play, or will he stay back?
Well, he'll go on the trip. It's just a matter of what's he going to be able to do as far as is he going to be able to do anything on the court as far because if he feels good enough. And by the way, Scoot himself, if it were up to Scoot, he would have played like last night. Every time I've talked to him, he's given the impression like I'm ready to go. I don't want to keep like he feels like it's something he could play through. I think a lot of this is just because of this midsection, they're calling this an adductor. Shaden had the core muscle thing because this is an injury that this organization, for whatever reason, has dealt with a lot of over the last couple of years. They're being super, super careful with it. Scoot, I think, feels like he could, could probably move a little bit quicker than maybe they want him to, but they're being careful with it. But I do think, Chauncey Billups said yesterday that he hasn't actually started doing any on-court work yet, so I don't think he's going to play on this upcoming 3-game road trip. Ideally, I think the hope is that shortly after that they have a 6-game homestand coming up. So at some point on that homestand, I think the hope would be that he plays. But this with the way this season is going, you really nothing would surprise me.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're talking with Sean Hyken, Rose Garden Report here on the Rip City Drive. Two more players to ask about in regards to injury. With Shaden Sharp, he had the core surgery. I think it was last week at practice when Chauncey told us that the hope is that he will return before the end of the season. What are your thoughts on where he's at and the possibility he might play before the end of the year?
Well, so when they initially had the surgery, which was a little less than 3 weeks ago, they said that he would be reevaluated in 6 weeks, and the date of 6 weeks since the surgery is March 22nd, which is right before, it's like near the end of a 3-game homestand and right before they go on this massive 7-game road trip. So theoretically at some point, around then he could be cleared to play. I haven't heard anything that would suggest that there's been any kind of setback. And the good news is that when you have this surgery, which is the same one that Damian Lillard had a couple of years ago, it's a pretty straightforward recovery. It's not the kind of thing Shaden is already back around the team. He's in the locker room. He hasn't done any full workouts, but you see him at practice getting shots up and just kind of doing light stuff. And also from what I have heard, I think something that they learned when Dame was going through it and when other guys have gone through that procedure is that inactivity is actually not great for it. And so once he's medically cleared to play by the training staff, I think they want to just get him back out there and get him some games at the end of the season. And from what from talking to Shaden, I think he's kind of eager to get back out there too. So I think there's a possibility that maybe the last 5 to 7 games of the season you could see him back out there if everything is going well with the rehab, but that's not a guarantee by any means. And at that point, they might just decide we've 7 games left, the lost season, what's the point? But I also would argue that it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world if he's going to have to fight through some discomfort no matter what. It wouldn't be the worst idea in the world to get him some game reps and kind of get him back on the right track before the season ends. But he certainly is not ruled out for the season.
Sean, have you seen Brogdon back on the court yet? I know they thought, he's progressing. How close is he? Have you heard?
He's been around. He had the PRP injections a couple weeks ago when they put out the release about his treatment. I guess, it's just kind of indefinitely at this point. That could be one. I think they would like for him to play again, and I would imagine he probably doesn't want to be shut down for the year. But that's one where you look at it and you kind of read between the lines and you look at it and say, okay, maybe this is kind of a prelude to the way that the last couple of seasons have gone. Maybe this is something they're leading up to, but. I don't like the update that they gave was pretty vague about that. It was kind of a non-update, but I don't really know where things stand with that right now.
We're talking with Sean Highkin, who is with the Rose Garden Report. I wanted to ask you about, just the franchise and how they see it. Because you hear from the same, fans that I do, Sean, in terms of, how, the fans view the franchise of the team right now, or the frustration with everything that's going on. And if you take a look over the last few years with the way the season's finished up, they just had this first month of February where they were 0-9. That's the first winless month in franchise history. In 22, they lost the last 21 of the 23 games that year, 15 of 17 last year, and they've lost 9 straight with 25 games to go this year. Now, how cognizant is the front office in terms of, because they have a plan and what they're trying to accomplish, but then also you've got the perception of the fans in terms of where things are at right now. How do you think they're looking at those things when it comes to their decision making?
I think there are definitely people who know that the optics would not be good if they did if they suddenly Brogdon for the year, and now DeAndre Ayton's out for the year, and Anthony Simons is out for the year, and Jeremy Grant is out for the year, and you're just going to. I think the end of this season would be a little bit different in the sense that at least the guys that would actually be playing if they were to go that route are guys that theoretically are going to still be on the team next year, and they're not just pulling G Leaguers out of off the street just to fill a roster out and have enough bodies.
Yeah.
But I think there is also definitely an element of if they were to decide to shut down like Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simons or somebody like that, there would be an element of really, we're really doing this again? What you're asking people to, go, spend their money to go watch it, to go to these games still, even though everybody knows they're in the lottery, and, pay whatever they have to pay for the cable package to watch these games. And this is we're going to make up injuries for all the guys. Doing that 3 years in a row is tough. And I think there are people, in the organization that know that, that wouldn't be well received, but also, it's above my pay grade to decide what they do. So I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I certainly sympathize with fans who, would not have an appetite to do that 3 years in a row.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So I'm curious, because you talk to people outside of Portland around the league. How do you think the front office views this year's draft and being especially at the top of the draft this year? How do you think the team looks at it?
I mean, I think there are probably a few guys that they like, but it's I've asked, people with other teams, who they like in the draft. And it's there's not, last year it was everybody knew that Victor Wembanyama was the number one guy. There wasn't even any contrarian, maybe it's somebody else. Everybody knew that it was that, and pretty much everybody knew that it was Scoot and Brandon Miller in the next tier, and then, the Twins and a couple other guys in the tier. There was kind of a breakdown of it, but you talk to 10 different front offices, you're probably going to get 10 different orders of, guys that they think are going to be, or that they think are worthy of being the number one pick, or, 10 different, some prospect that's, some guy, one of the guys from the G League Ignite, Modest Bazella, some teams have top 5, some teams have outside of the lottery. It's so there's nobody in this draft like a Wemby last year, or what people think Cooper Flagg is going to be next year, where you feel you draft this guy, you're getting a future franchise cornerstone. I think there are guys that I think teams like, but I actually had someone tell me, a couple days ago that this draft is normal as far as the talent level if you start at the 5th pick. So basically the number 1 pick in the draft this year is probably, in terms of the talent level and the value of the pick, probably similar to what the number 5 pick would be in a normal draft. If that makes sense. So like the top end of it is not, it doesn't have the ceiling or have the star potential of, what you would expect a normal, top 2 or 3 in a draft to have. But there's usually, 6 or 7 guys in each draft at the minimum that pop, that end up being stars, or at least end up being like really high end starters or productive players. It just might not be the first 7 guys taken in the draft. And this draft, I think, is even more so like that.
John, do you see this summer being the summer where they're holding on to a few, tradable assets? Could this be the summer where they go all in and make the move to bring in a young player who can start forming it forward and, maybe even a high pick in the future or something like that? But could this be the time, given the lack of success the last 2 years and then this year?
I think they definitely want to do some stuff this summer. I don't know. When you say make the move, I don't think they're really looking at, what they were talking about looking at doing last summer before Damian Lillard asked for the trade, when they had the number 3 pick and they thought they could trade that for like a star. I don't think it's that sort of. I don't think that sort of move is necessarily coming. But I do think they feel like they can't just run back this team and say, well, we just hope everybody stays healthier and everybody grows. They're gonna have to. I mean, financially, they're also just gonna have to consolidate some stuff. Like I think Malcolm Brogdon, now that he's gonna be on an expiring deal going into next year, I think they probably have to do something there. And a couple of those other guys they might have to make some decisions on. But I definitely think there will be changes this summer, pretty big ones. I just don't know about what you refer to as like the big move. Like I don't know if they're quite there yet. They might be a year away from that still.
Do you think they're still committed to keeping the 3 guards together, Ant, Shaden, and Scoot?
At least for one more year, unless like an absolutely perfect offer comes along. And by perfect offer, I mean like whatever their version of, like, remember when the Kings traded Tyrese Halliburton to the Pacers and they got Domantas Sabonis, and now like the Pacers now have Halliburton as like their guy that they're building around. That's their franchise guy, and it wasn't somebody that they drafted, but it was somebody that they traded for in the first couple of years of their career that was kind of still on the upswing and turned into a fringe MVP candidate once he got to Indiana. If there's a deal out there for, I don't know even who that would be necessarily, but for somebody of that caliber that's, still on their rookie deal, still young and fits positionally with 2 of those 3 guards, somebody on the wing perhaps, or, someone in the front court, that I think would be something they would look at for that, whoever that may be. But at least for right now, I think they don't feel like they're under any pressure to make a decision about which 2 of those 3 guards to keep right now. Now, going into next season, you have to remember, going into the 25-26 season, Shaden Sharp is going to be eligible for the rookie extension, and Anthony Simons is going to be going into the last year of his contract. So they're going to have to make some decisions there, and then we'll see what Scoot turns into in his second season coming up. But I think they're a year away from actually a hard deadline to make any sort of decision on that.
All right, Sean, what are you working on right now to keep an eye out for with the Rose Garden Report?
I have a few. I'm like starting. I just booked my trip to Chicago for May to go to the Draft Combine, which is an event that I do every year. So I'm kind of starting to maybe shift a little bit into draft mode, which I probably won't shift super hard into until the season is over. But there's a few things. I mean, there's a couple of remix things I'm hoping to do before the season is over. I think a lot is really going to depend on what they do over the next couple of weeks. If they decide to just shut everybody down, then okay, I guess I'm just going to go fully into future mode and draft mode. But if guys are still playing, there's going to still be stuff to do, and I think there'll still be a little bit more of a reason to watch than there has been the last couple of years. So, we'll just see how that all plays out.
All right, Sean Highkin with the Rose Garden Report. You can follow him on X at Highkin. He's here in the Rip City Drive. Sean, as always, appreciate the time, my friend. Enjoy the week, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, good to talk to you guys.
Good. There you go, Sean Highkin with us. I haven't heard from anyone I've spoken with. I don't get the indication that they're just going to start. It's not going to be the full-on shut everyone down like we've seen the last couple of years. I don't think they can afford to do that.
Yeah, I don't either, and I don't think there's any real reason to do it because even if you're tanking, it's not like you're winning a bunch of games with these guys. You can play everybody, and you're still going to be in the lottery. Maybe you drop back a slot or two, but this is a season where nobody seems in a big hurry to get the number 1 or 2 pick.
No, and I think especially Scoot's going to play, and my guess would be they got the homestand starting a week from tonight. Oklahoma City will be in town. My guess is that Scoot will play then and then the rest of the way, so that'll give him a little over 20 games to go for the rest of the season. You want to have your players that you're trying to get a look at on the floor with the best possible guys available, right?
Yeah.
Because, for development and from being able to get that information you've talked about as you continue to look at the roster and what you want to do moving forward.
Yeah, and the other thing, Chad, as I questioned him about whether a big move was coming, I think there could this summer be a real tussle between the basketball side, which is going to plead for patience. We need more time to check these guys out and see what they are together. And the business side, which is saying, guys, we're struggling here. We're trying to sell season tickets here. And if you could bring us one more piece of the future that we can help sell along with Scoot, that would really help the franchise.
How often are there conflicts within organizations between the basketball or football side and the business side within the organization? Is it frequent?
I think it happens. Yeah, I do think it happens, Chad. And that's usually where an owner steps forward, and that's an owner's call, whether we want to pull the trigger now or if we want to just wait another summer, because they're responsible for the financial part of it. In the end, that's the owner's thing. They're the ones writing the check. So you'll see that. But you also see it with teams that are winning teams.
Yeah.
Do you want to really go all in and trade for Damian Lillard, for instance? Well, Milwaukee is willing to do that. Miami wasn't willing to throw enough logs on the fire to get the fire going with the Blazers. Those are tough calls, man, because I mean, God love them. The people out there busting their tails to sell sponsorships, season tickets, with a lot of the negativity that's gone on with the cable situation, with Root Sports, and then the record on the court. It's tough on them. I mean, and they're the ones that keep this whole thing going.
Yeah, and how it goes in. You can take some L's, but there can be wins too, where let's say you go out and you make a move this summer to dramatically improve the team to where they start moving in the right direction.
Right.
You don't have to be a title contender, but if you're winning games, you're competitive, and you're putting an exciting product on the floor, and then following that, after your deal with Root expires, if they take the Phoenix Suns model and all of a sudden they're offering up their games for free, well, that's a good way to get wins with the fan base and the community, right?
It is, Chad, and I really think
and everyone wants to be associated with the winner.
Yeah, of course, and I think don't forget this is Portland. It doesn't take an awful lot to get people excited. It's not like they don't have the baseball team to get excited about. We don't have an NFL team here. They'll be excited if you give them, you got to give them something, though. And this would be the summer to do it, I think.
I got my tickets for the Yankee Stadium tour locked in, which includes a little trip down to Monument Park.
Oh, yeah. That's a must. They take you in the clubhouses, too, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Nice.
I didn't think I would like the ballpark tour, but I've done a few of them now, and I think they're pretty dope. I'm down with them. Never toured that. You and I went to Yankee Stadium. The only time I've been there was with you, but we didn't we didn't go through a tour, but I liked everything I saw.
Too many things going that day.
It's like, all right, quick hit at the ballpark, and then we shoot across the river so we can get to the City Field for the concert.
Mm-hmm. That was nice.
That didn't suck. The guy trying to shaft us with an expensive ride that wasn't an official Uber guy.
He put his phony Uber sign up in the window when he saw us. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's like a fake Uber driver.
Yeah.
How much to get over there? $100? What? Get out of here.
No thanks.
Yeah.
You could drop us right here.
Yeah. No thanks. That's ridiculous. I think we got in and got out.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
How much? All right. Have a good day.
Well, he wasn't a real guy. Didn't show up on the app or anything.
He could have taken us anywhere.
Yeah. Probably a good thing we didn't ride with him. It was, after all, New York.
Yeah.
You know?
How many tourists get taken advantage in that town every year?
Oh, boy. Somebody was complaining online about the cost of room service in New York, in Manhattan. Like, that's a new problem.
That's been going on for years.
Oh, God, decades.
That's not an inflation problem. That's a New York problem.
Exactly.
Dude, hotel rooms in properly located in the city, not cheap.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, actually.
You can spend $100 on breakfast, room service in New York real easy. Bacon and eggs, $100. Oh, you want hash browns? 140.
Well, they're good hash browns.
Yeah. Orange juice is extra.
Freshly squeezed, though.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Sure.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Drive. Big thanks to Sean Hyken and Eric Bjornson for joining the show today. All right, my first concert, Godfather, back in the fall of 1992, Def Leppard at the Memorial Coliseum. That was my very first concert. One little taste, I'm like, I need a lot more of whatever that was I just got.
Yeah.
Because my mom was very protective of little Chad, and she wouldn't let me venture out to all the various concerts. Hey, Mom, can I go see Thompson Twins? Nope. What about Hall & Oates? Nope, can't do that either. All right, thanks. But once I reached a certain age level, then she opened things up for me. This was my first concert. It was very nice.
Did you go by yourself?
No, I went with my buddy Jason, one of his buddies, his sister. So it was a little party, little crew. But it was weird to go to a concert for the first time because I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah, the first one's always a little bit of a mystery.
It didn't take me long into my concert ventures to realize that most opening acts suck. What's going on here? What is this band doing out here? Why do you suck so much? And where's the real act? That used to bother me. I don't like opening acts, pretty much ever, especially if it's James Dolan and JD and the Straight Shot. I don't need that.
That's an hour out of our lives we'll never get back.
Oh, my goodness. Yep. And then one of my favorites was I was driving home from, I don't know, I was coming back into Vancouver. It was on a Friday. I went down, I think I was still in college, so I went down to study math with my dad, algebra, because he was the math genius.
Really?
Yeah. I used to meet him because he worked right down there off 6th and Everett at the old customs building. And so we'd go to a coffee shop right up the street, and he would sit down with me, and for like 2 hours, we'd just pound out problem after problem after problem.
Wow, that's great.
And it was great because he helped me ace all of my math classes in college. And I was driving back one day, and I was listening to the radio. I could pick up this station like 96.1 that was up in, I think, like around Centralia. But they were saying, like, oh, America is going to be at the Clark County Fairgrounds. I'm like, what? The America? And so I called this radio station. I'm like, wait a second. You just said America? Like, the America? Oh, yeah, the 70s band. I'm like, oh, that's dope. So I hit up my buddy Corey. I was like, dude, America's going to be at the Clark County Fairgrounds tonight. We got to go. I paid a fare admission of like $6, and that's all we had to pay to get to the concert. No tickets. They played for 2 hours. I was blown away.
Yeah. See, I tried to remember my first one, but I finally came on it. It was at the Multnomah County Fair, believe it or not. Multnomah County Fair out at the Expo Center.
Yeah.
They had their fair there in those days, and it was the association, who I really liked. I was a big association fan.
Everyone knows it's windy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along Comes Mary.
They got some great songs.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was fun.
What else?
They only played two. I bet they played like 7 or 8 songs. That was it.
And then one time I got drugged to a Brooks and Dunn concert. That going into it was at the Motor Center. And this was a long time ago. I didn't want to go. I'm like, country music, get out. Then I went. I was like, hey, these guys are good. I enjoyed the show. I went to a Lori Morgan concert once down at Portland Meadows. It sucked. She was terrible. And then I did see Earth, Wind, and Fire for the first time down at Portland Meadows. That was awesome. I saw Kim Body that night, too. I was like, hey, what's up, Ken? And they put on a good show. Let's go out to Paul, who wants to close the show. Paul, you're on the Rip City Drive. You get the final word tonight. What's on your mind?
Hey, good afternoon, Chad. Love listening to you guys. I've been a Blazers fan for 50 years.
Oh, good.
I am very curious to know, however, Portland has hosted NCAA tournaments, but is there some reason behind the fact that Portland's never hosted an NBA All-Star game? I've been told it's because of the accommodations, but...
Well, let's answer that question for you, Paul. Appreciate the phone call. Dwight, give us 20 seconds of why it's never happened.
Yeah, it used to be the excuse there wasn't enough hotel rooms. That excuse is gone. I think the big problem over the years has been the Blazers haven't been willing to bid on it too many times. I think they bid 2 or 3 times, but that's all. It's very expensive for a team to run the All-Star game.
All right, big thanks to Mike Oakes, to all of you for listening. Justin Myers will have Rip City Mornings tomorrow at 6, and we're back with the Rip City Drive at 3. Have a good night.